You ever have one of those days when life decides to test your patience and you end up rewriting the rules instead? That was me, standing on my dock, staring at a bright orange violation notice taped to my boat. In big bold letters it read, "Unauthorized watercraft, remove immediately." That was the moment I knew the HOA had gone too far. See, I'd worked years to afford this quiet little lakefront home, a place to escape the noise, to fish on weekends, to float with a cold drink and nothing but the sound of water lapping against the hull. My boat wasn't fancy, just an old silver Crestliner with a few scratches, but it was mine. Apparently the HOA didn't care about that. They said my boat was unsightly, that it disrupted the natural harmony of the community. Funny thing was, half the board members had kayaks, paddleboards, and jet skis cluttering their own docks. But when I asked about those, the president, Karen Whitmore, smiled like she owned the sun and said, "Those are approved. Yours isn't." Now Karen had been a thorn in everyone's side since the day she got elected. The kind of person who measured lawns with a ruler and sent fines if your trash can was visible for more than 12 minutes. But this was personal. I called her calmly and asked for an explanation. She told me my boat didn't fit the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I told her I didn't move here for the aesthetic. I moved here for the lake. 2 days later, I woke up to find a tow truck by the water's edge. They were trying to haul my boat away. I ran out barefoot, still in my coffee-stained t-shirt, shouting across the yard, "Hey! You touched that boat and I'm calling the cops!" Karen stood there with her clipboard, sunglasses on, like some kind of HOA sheriff. "Sir," she said with a smirk, "we're just enforcing community guidelines." That's when something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in resolve. If they wanted to play this game, fine. But I wasn't just going to fight them. I was going to end it. And it all started with a phone call to the man who owned the lake itself. When I found out the HOA didn't actually own the lake, something inside me clicked. They could send all the violation letters they wanted, but they didn't have real power over the water. That lake belonged to someone else. So I did what any stubborn homeowner with a bruised ego and a point to prove would do. I went digging. After 3 hours of searching county land records, I finally found it. The lake and its surrounding access points were owned by an elderly man named Franklin Dorsey, a retired engineer, who'd bought the land decades ago for fishing and family picnics. The HOA had a lease to use it, but they didn't own it. That was my opening. I called Franklin. To my surprise, he picked up on the first ring. His voice was raspy but kind, like the kind of guy who's seen the world and decided to live away from it. "Mr. Dorsey," I said, "I live on Lakeshore Drive, near the East Dock. The HOA's been giving me grief about my boat, and I just found out you own the lake." He chuckled softly. "They still doing that nonsense? They tried to fine me back in '99 for parking my canoe wrong." We talked for nearly an hour. Turns out Franklin was tired of the HOA too. They'd been pushing him for years to sell the lake rights so they could enforce beautification standards. I asked him if he'd ever consider selling to me. There was a long pause. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Son, I don't sell things to people who want to own them. I sell to people who will respect them." "You sound like the second kind." 3 weeks later, after some paperwork, a notary visit, and a savings account that looked like it had been hit by a tornado, I officially owned the lake. The day I signed the deed, I drove home with the paperwork on the passenger seat, laughing the whole way. The HOA had just tried to remove my boat, and now, legally every drop of water under it was mine. That night I parked my boat dead, center on the lake, and turned on the deck lights so bright they reflected across every window in Karen's house. The next morning, I knew she'd seen them, because she stormed down the street with a folder in her hand and fury in her eyes. And that's when the real battle began. You could almost feel the rage rolling off Karen before she even reached my driveway. Her sunglasses were off, her clipboard was clutched like a weapon, and her lips were pursed so tight it looked like she was trying to swallow a lemon. "Mr. Thompson," she snapped, "we need to talk now." I leaned against the porch railing, coffee mug in hand, trying not to laugh. "Morning, Karen. Beautiful day to own a lake, isn't it?" Her face froze. "What did you just say?" I held up the deed, still warm from the printer. "This right here says the lake, and everything on it belongs to me now." For a second, she didn't believe it. Then she snatched the papers from my hand and started scanning every line, her face turning from red to pale to a kind of ghostly white. "You can't, this must be a mistake," she stammered. "No mistake," I said. "You tried to take my boat, so I took your playground." That's when she lost it. Karen marched back to the HOA office and called an emergency meeting. Within hours, half the board was in her living room, waving their own copies of HOA bylaws like courtroom lawyers. I could hear them from my porch, arguing, panicking, shouting things like, He can't do that. Can we override it? What if he closes the lake access? That last one made me smile, because they were right to worry. The HOA didn't own the access ramps or docks anymore. Technically, they were trespassing if they touched my water without permission. Later that evening, Karen came storming back with a new plan. She tried to threaten me with community harmony violations. I laughed so hard, I almost spilled my drink. Karen, you don't make the rules out there anymore. I do. She tried to bluff. We'll sue. Go ahead, I said. But every time your lawyers step foot on my property, it'll cost you dock fees. That shut her up. Word spread fast around the neighborhood. People started calling, thanking me, even offering to pay small fees to use the lake for fishing or kayaking. I didn't ask for money, just a simple rule. Respect the water, and it's yours to enjoy. The HOA's power started to crumble overnight. Karen's emails went unanswered. Fines were ignored, and meetings went empty. But she wasn't done yet. She had one last desperate move, one that could change everything again. For a few weeks, peace returned to the lake. Kids were swimming again. Neighbors were smiling, and for once, the sound of laughter replaced the endless drone of HOA warnings. But just when I thought the storm had passed, it came back, wearing a blazer and heels. Karen showed up one morning, standing on my dock like she owned it. Behind her was a man in a gray suit holding a briefcase. Mr. Thompson, she said, voice tight. This is Mr. Lowell, our HOA attorney. We have a proposal. I raised an eyebrow. Proposal or threat? She forced a smile. Opportunity. The HOA would like to buy back the lake at a fair market rate. I laughed out loud. You mean the same HOA that tried to steal my boat? Her lawyer cleared his throat. We believe ownership of the lake by a private resident creates complications. Liability, access disputes, insurance issues. I cut him off. Save it. You just don't like that you're not in control anymore. Karen's smile faltered. This isn't about control. It's about community harmony. I stepped closer. Karen, harmony doesn't mean everyone obeys you. It means people live freely without you breathing down their necks. The lawyer started to speak again, but Karen snapped, Forget it, Lowell. Then she turned to me. You think you've won? You'll regret this. People will turn on you. But she was wrong. Because that same afternoon, my neighbors started showing up one by one with coolers, chairs, and fishing poles. Someone brought a grill. Someone else brought music. Before long, it turned into a neighborhood lake party. Even the folks who once voted for Karen joined in. Kids were splashing, dogs were barking, and for the first time in years, everyone felt like a real community again. Karen stood across the street, watching silently, arms folded, her empire crumbling in real time. As the sun dipped low, I took my boat out one more time, just a slow ride across the golden water. The reflection of the sky shimmered around me, and I thought about how it all started. One orange violation notice taped to my boat. Now that same boat floated freely, on a lake that no HOA could ever touch again. Sometimes you don't fight fire with fire. Sometimes you just buy the whole lake. Cho messed with the wrong guy, like the video. Subscribe for more crazy HOA stories and tell me in the comments, what would you have done?